So as we continue with this project, one of the major obstacles is keeping our priorities straight because there's just a lot.
No, Anne, let's face it. The real obstacle is customer growth. If we get customer growth, that's going to really.
Hi, I'm Anne with Lighthouse Communications. And do you ever get interrupted like I just did in that video? You're in the middle of a meeting, you finally have the floor, you have a point that you really want to make, and someone cuts you off. It can feel so frustrating, and it often sidetracks the conversation for everyone. That's why in this video, I want to share with you 4 simple tips that you can use in the moment when someone's trying to interrupt you. And I also want to share a couple tips that you can use to help change the culture around interrupting in your workplace. Let's start with some simple things that you can do in the moment. The first tip is to use phrases that signal, I'm not finished talking. For example, I really feel one of the main obstacles we're going to face next year is maintaining our priorities with all these different things that we have going on.
The real obstacle.
Michael, if I could just finish 1 second, I want to hear your thought. Just let me finish this point real quick.
Okay.
Here's something that's really important. When you're using these phrases to fend off an interruption, it's important to try not to show annoyance, to maintain your composure. For example, if I say, if I could finish my point first, that is a very different feeling than if I could finish my point first. So really remember to stay calm, cool, and collected. The second tip for how to minimize interruptions in the moment is to use subtle body language to signal, again, that you're not done. So you use the hand raise, you can raise your index finger, you can look if you're in the room directly at that person. For instance, take a look at how I do this in the video. The first is that...
Before you continue.
Excuse me, Michael, if I could just finish my point first. Tip number 3 is dial up that volume. Volume conveys confidence. And if you're speaking confidently, you're less likely to be interrupted in the first place. And if someone is trying to cut in, you dial up that volume to signal, I'm going to speak more loudly than you to hold the floor. Tip number 4, be concise. If you are habitually long-winded, people may feel that they have no choice but to interrupt. And so it's really important in a meeting to respect everyone's time and to try to make your points concise. Those tips that I just shared can work well in the moment to avoid being interrupted. But let's talk about what to do if you think there's a greater awareness that needs to happen, a greater culture shift. Tip number 1 is to set clear expectations at the beginning of the meeting. Let people know how you want the participation to play out. For example, at the beginning of a meeting, you might say, hey, everyone, in the interest of time for today's meeting, I'm going to share the proposal first. That'll take about 10 minutes, and then I'll open it up to your questions and comments. So as things come up, just write them down, and then afterwards we can discuss. And that's a pretty clear indication that you don't wish to be interrupted at the beginning. The second and final thing that you can do is to create more awareness. If you notice that someone's getting interrupted in the moment, advocate to let that person finish. For example,
before moving on, let's let Rachel finish her point.
The bottom line is it does not feel good to be interrupted. Use these tips to help you in the moment and to try to create greater awareness on your team and in your company. If you have any great tips for dealing with interruptions that we didn't mention, please share them in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe, like, leave comments and questions below. And if you or your team are interested in a training, please email info@lhctraining.com.